Imagine a king whose influence stretches far beyond the borders of his nation, reaching into the hearts and souls of people across the world. A ruler so revered that he is not only seen as a political leader, but is also worshipped as a divine figure. This is the story of Emperor Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia, who is considered by Rastafarians as the living God on earth, their spiritual redeemer. But why do Rastafarians worship him? And what makes this relationship so profound? Let's embark on a journey to understand the deep spiritual bond between Rastafarians and Emperor Haile Selassie. The divine status of Emperor Haile Selassie I within the Rastafarian faith traces its origins to a prophecy that stirred the hopes of millions in the Caribbean. This prophecy was proclaimed by Marcus Garvey, a Jamaican political leader and activist who played a significant role in the Pan-Africanism movement. Though Garvey himself never embraced the Rastafarian faith, his words left an indelible mark on the movement. In the 1920s, Garvey told his followers, "Look to Africa when a black king shall be crowned, for the day of deliverance is near." This prophecy became a beacon of hope for many of the oppressed black people in Jamaica, who were seeking a sense of identity, liberation, and spiritual connection to their African roots. Jamaica, under British colonial rule, was a place of great suffering for the descendants of enslaved Africans. Marcus Garvey's message was more than just a call for political action. It was a message of spiritual salvation and a reclaiming of African heritage. His vision of a black king being crowned in Africa set the stage for the Rastafarian movement to later embrace Emperor Haile Selassie I as that prophetic figure. The Rastafarian movement's connection to Emperor Haile Selassie began to solidify on November 2, 1930, when Rastafari Makonnen was crowned Emperor of Ethiopia, taking the name Haile Selassie, which translates to Power of the Trinity. His coronation was an event of grand magnitude, with representatives from around the world attending the lavish ceremony. The crowning of an African monarch who was internationally recognized as a legitimate ruler sparked immense pride among the black community in Jamaica. For many Jamaicans, this moment was seen as the fulfillment of Garvey's prophecy. The belief grew that Emperor Haile Selassie was the prophesied Black Messiah who had come to liberate black people from oppression and guide them to spiritual salvation. The Rastafarian movement, which was still in its infancy, quickly embraced the Ethiopian emperor as their living god, referring to him as Jah, a shortened form of Jehovah. The significance of Ethiopia, a symbol of African redemption. Ethiopia held special significance in the hearts of many black people across the diaspora. It was one of the few African countries that had never been colonized, successfully resisting European conquest during the scramble for Africa in the late 19th century. This history of defiance and independence made Ethiopia a symbol of African pride and resistance against imperialism. For Rastafarians, Ethiopia represented the Promised Land, the place where black people could return to after centuries of oppression and displacement. The biblical narrative of the Exodus, where the Israelites were led out of bondage in Egypt to the Promised Land, was often evoked by Rastafarians as a metaphor for their own struggle. They viewed their lives in Jamaica as an exile in Babylon, a term used to describe the oppressive Western world. Ethiopia, under the leadership of Haile Selassie, became their Zion, the place where they believed they would one day return and find true liberation. Rastafarians did not see Haile Selassie as merely a political figure or a symbol of resistance. They viewed him as a divine being, the second coming of Christ, sent to redeem black people. Several aspects of Haile Selassie's coronation reinforced this belief. During the ceremony, he was given titles that echoed biblical language, including King of Kings, Lord of Lords, and Conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah. These titles, drawn from the Book of Revelation, solidified the belief among Rastafarians that Haile Selassie was not just an earthly ruler, but a divine figure with a spiritual mandate to lead his people. Rastafarians believe that God has manifested on earth in human form 3 times, first as Melchizedek, then as Jesus Christ, and finally as Haile Selassie. They see Selassie as the fulfillment of the biblical prophecy of the return of the Messiah. who would establish God's kingdom on earth. This belief is reflected in the Rastafarian greeting. Greetings in the name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I, Jah Rastafari, which acknowledges Haile Selassie as both God Jah and King Rastafari. One of the most defining moments in Haile Selassie's international reputation, and a key factor in his veneration by Rastafarians, was his address to the League of Nations in 1936. Following Italy's invasion of Ethiopia in 1935, led by Benito Mussolini, Haile Selassie was forced to flee his country and seek refuge in Europe. From his exile, he addressed the League of Nations, making a passionate plea for international intervention against Italian aggression. In his speech, Haile Selassie warned the world about the dangers of unchecked aggression and the need for global cooperation to uphold justice and peace. He famously stated, "It is us today, it will be you tomorrow," a prophetic warning that foreshadowed the outbreak of World War II just a few years later. For Rastafarians, this speech was further proof of Haile Selassie's divine mission. His call for justice resonated deeply with their own struggles against colonialism and oppression. They saw him as a voice for the voiceless, a leader who not only fought for his people but for the oppressed around the world. Haile Selassie's commitment to peace, justice, and African unity became central themes in Rastafarian theology. A key event that solidified Haile Selassie's divine status among Rastafarians was his historic visit to Jamaica on April 21, 1966. The anticipation for his arrival was immense, as thousands of Rastafarians gathered at the airport in Kingston to greet their God. As the Emperor's plane landed, a miraculous event occurred. According to witnesses, the rain that had been falling all day suddenly stopped, and the sun broke through the clouds. This was interpreted by Rastafarians as a divine sign, confirming Haile Selassie's status as the Messiah. The day of his arrival is now celebrated annually as Coronation Day, one of the most important religious holidays in the Rastafarian calendar. Haile Selassie's visit was a moment of profound spiritual significance for the Rastafarian community. It was the first and only time that their God had physically visited them, and it reaffirmed their belief in his divinity. Although Haile Selassie did not explicitly claim to be God during his visit, his presence and the miracles associated with his arrival were enough to convince Rastafarians of his divine nature. The global spread of Rastafarianism can largely be attributed to the rise of reggae music, which became a powerful vehicle for communicating the movement's spiritual and political message. At the forefront of this musical revolution was Bob Marley, the legendary reggae artist whose music was deeply infused with Rastafarian themes and references to Haile Selassie. Bob Marley's songs often praised Haile Selassie as the divine ruler and spoke of the struggle against oppression, both spiritual and political. One of his most famous songs, War, is based on Haile Selassie's speech to the United Nations, in which the emperor called for an end to racial discrimination. Marley's music became an anthem for Rastafarians and brought the movement's beliefs to a global audience. Through his lyrics, Haile Selassie's teachings of peace, unity, and justice were spread far beyond the shores of Jamaica. Reggae music became the soundtrack of the Rastafarian movement, and its international popularity helped to establish Haile Selassie as a global icon of resistance and spiritual redemption. Bob Marley's influence extended beyond the music. He became a cultural ambassador for Rastafarianism, using his fame to promote the teachings of Haile Selassie and the movement's call for African unity and liberation. In 1974, Haile Selassie was overthrown in a military coup, and the following year, he was reported to have died under mysterious circumstances while under house arrest. For many Rastafarians, the news of his death was a deeply traumatic event. How could a living God, an eternal divine figure, die? This question posed a significant challenge to the Rastafarian faith, leading to different interpretations within the movement. Some Rastafarians refused to believe that Haile Selassie had truly died, insisting that his death was a fabrication or that only his physical body had perished, while his spirit remained alive and continued to guide his followers. Rastafarianism's relationship with Emperor Haile Selassie transcends mere religious worship. It intertwines cultural identity, historical defiance, and profound spirituality. Drawing parallels with other religious movements, the veneration of Haile Selassie can be likened to how historical figures such as Gautama Buddha, Jesus Christ, or Prophet Muhammad were revered as divine or messianic. For Rastafarians, Selassie's role as a redeemer mirrors these religious icons, embodying spiritual fulfillment and liberation. However, Rastafarianism's diversity means interpretations of his divinity vary. Some sects view him as God incarnate, while others see him as a symbol of Black pride and African unity. This duality within the faith allows for a broader spectrum of belief, accommodating both literal and symbolic adherence. Beyond religion, Haile Selassie's influence permeates global culture. He is a central figure not just in Rastafarianism, but also in broader movements of African pride and liberation. Reggae music, popularized by global icons like Bob Marley, uses Haile Selassie's image and speeches as emblems of resistance and hope. His philosophies of equality, unity, and resistance against oppression have inspired artists and activists worldwide. Rastafarians, with their unique hairstyles, music, and lifestyle, have become cultural ambassadors, spreading Selassie's legacy to new audiences. This cultural significance ensures that even those outside Rastafarianism recognize and respect his contributions. In today's world, Haile Selassie's relevance extends into modern discussions about identity and liberation. Rastafarianism continues to thrive, especially among younger generations seeking a connection to their roots and spiritual guidance in an era of globalization. While traditional forms of worship might evolve, the message of Selassie as a liberator remains poignant. Social media, global travel, and cultural exchanges have further strengthened the reach of Rastafarian teachings, ensuring that Selassie's legacy is not confined to Ethiopia or Jamaica, but resonates globally. Selassie's work with the Organization of African Unity, OAU, is a cornerstone of his Pan-African legacy. His belief in African self-determination and unity strongly aligns with Rastafarian ideals of repatriation and freedom from colonial oppression. Through the OAU, Selassie worked toward collective progress for Africa, inspiring Rastafarians to adopt a Pan-African worldview that emphasized solidarity and shared heritage. His efforts underscored a broader vision of interconnectedness, where the liberation of one African nation symbolized hope for the entire continent. Criticism of Haile Selassie's leadership has, however, posed challenges to Rastafarianism. Accusations of authoritarian rule and the suppression of dissent have led to debates about reconciling his political record with his divine status. These critiques have not significantly diminished his standing among Rastafarians, who often separate his political actions from his spiritual significance. For them, Selassie's symbolic representation as a liberator outweighs any flaws in his earthly governance. This approach demonstrates the flexibility within Rastafarian theology to prioritize spiritual redemption over political perfection. Discussions around Haile Selassie's divinity also highlight the complexities of interpreting his death. Many Rastafarians viewed his passing as a test of faith, with some denying his physical demise or emphasizing the immortality of his spiritual presence. This mirrors how other religions have grappled with the deaths of their founders, finding ways to preserve their relevance through reinterpretation and renewed focus on their teachings. The theological adaptations within Rastafarianism show its resilience and ability to address challenges while keeping Haile Selassie's legacy alive. In sum, the worship of Haile Selassie by Rastafarians is multifaceted, blending spirituality, culture, and history. It draws from deep-seated traditions of resistance and redemption while engaging with contemporary challenges of identity and globalization. Whether viewed through the lens of religion, culture, or politics, Selassie's influence remains a powerful symbol of liberation and unity, transcending the boundaries of time and geography. From the powerful prophecy of Marcus Garvey to the enduring legacy of Emperor Haile Selassie I, the Rastafarian faith tells a story of hope, redemption, and spiritual unity. Selassie's influence transcends religion, shaping cultural and political movements that resonate globally. What part of this incredible history stands out to you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that connect the past to our present. Until next time, keep the spirit of unity alive